My name is Dale Whitice, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Jon Young for 30 years. Excuse me, not Jon Young. Jon Compton for 30 years. Good Jon Young. Jon and I met him together at a place called the People's Church. Jon owned the front door, just like he did here at Glades, Church by the Glades. My wife said to me, I've got this really cute little church I want you to come to, because we were living in Miami and she would come up here and visit her father. And she wanted me to meet a man named Jon Compton. She said, you're going to fall in love with him. Well, she had good taste in them because I fell in love with him. Jon and I had many adventures together. We traveled the United States together. We did so many things that are of a personal nature. I don't want to bore you with them because they wouldn't mean anything to you. But if you know Jon, you'll know what I'm saying when I say the stories I'm getting ready to tell you. Because Jon made every situation we had unique. He made every situation fun, and he made every situation a joy to be involved in. I can tell you that when Jon first met Jon, he owned a paint shop at Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport. And, excuse me, my father, God rest his soul, had a corporate aircraft that he used for his insurance business. I was already practicing law, so I wasn't involved in it, but Jon and I had this relationship to aviation, so that was one of the first contacts we had with each other. Anyway, suddenly I became Jon's lawyer. I didn't know why I became Jon's lawyer, but suddenly I did, because I was a criminal defense attorney. He might have been a criminal, but I didn't represent him in anything criminal. Well, anyway, he comes and says, I've got a dispute with my landlord at Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport. I said, well, what's the matter? He says, well, I'm running a paint shop here. He says, I'm not supposed to. I said, well, let me see the lease. And it clearly said, no independent businesses in the company. I said, you've got a dead loser, my friend. No. I said, okay. So we went to this, it wasn't jury trial, it was just before the judge. And we're taking the testimony of the court. And if you've all seen LA Law or Boston Legal, you've seen what they do in Hollywood is someone's up there giving direct testimony, and what the point the writer wants to make, someone else stands up and starts testifying. Well, that's exactly what happened. The manager of the place is there arguing that this man is running an illegal paint shop, he shouldn't be here. Jon had all the permits from the county. Don't get me wrong, everything was legal except for this one thing in the lease. And Jon stands up and says, how can you say it's illegal? I painted your airplane 2 weeks ago. And I looked at Jon, and the judge said, did he paint your airplane? He said, yeah, but. So we walked out, and the owner of the place, who happened to be a friend of my father's, looked at me and said, how can you represent this man against me? I didn't say anything to him, but anyway, he fired his lawyer on the spot, and I think he fired the manager too. And we kept the paint shop there until the lease ended. And that, as they say, is an absolute true story. And I said to Jon, why didn't you tell me you painted the man's airplane? I could have asked him on testimony. He said, I wanted to keep it hidden. So that is Jon Compton. That is the man I loved. He never, whenever I would call him, he never said, hey, Dale. He never said hello. He said, hey, baby. And that's what I was to him, hey, baby. And that's what we were. I can tell you a couple of other stories that are quick, and my delivery is just not the way he made them sound, because it was his baritone voice, the deadpan, the way he made the delivery. But one day, we're driving in the car and he's talking to someone on the phone. I don't know what it was. He says, yes, I'm in the car with Dale. And my son happened to be in the backseat, Brandon. He was about 15 years old at the time. We're just driving along and he's talking to someone. He says, yeah, I'm riding in the car with Dale. I got Dale in the car and I got Brandon in the back with a goat. Where this goat came from, I don't know. But the way he said it, I laughed so hard I had to pull the car over. It was so funny. And when I told my son Brandon, who's now a lieutenant in the Air Force, he remembered the goat story. And that's what Jon did to you. It says, famous quote, and I want to read it to you because it makes you feel something about it. It says, people might forget what you say, people might forget what you do, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And based on this turnout today, I can tell you that Jon Compton made all of us feel mighty good, did he not? That man was something else. When John and our relationship matured more and more, I had been overseas for years. I moved overseas for about 13 years. But our friendship remained the same. We spoke on the phone almost every week at least. And when I came back, he was the first person I wanted to see. We went to lunches together. We went to dinners together. In fact, the photograph that is right there is of him in the blazer was taken, and Cody, you don't know this, was taken by me the night before his daughter passed away. We were at a meeting with Rod and a gentleman by the name of Steve Waterford. When John's daughter passed away, you would have thought that his world had come to an end. But John's life continued, and his upbeat way of living life continued. He grieved for his daughter. He grieved for his loss. But his faith in Christ, his faith in God, and his faith in his fellow man never wavered. And Jon continued on after that. And Cody, on behalf of everyone here, on behalf of my family, and all the people who aren't here that loved your dad, and to Laura and to Chrissy, you have our deepest sympathy. Every person in this room loved your dad as much as you loved him. And you should know that. And that's a legacy that you and your two sisters will be able to keep for the rest of your lives. That your father touched people's lives. There are people in this room that I've spoken to over the last few days while Jon was declining, who Jon led to the Lord. Jon, through his prison ministry, not that these people are in prison, through his outreach programs, through his Bible studies, through his faith in the Lord, he led people to Christ. And that's a legacy that will never end, because these people's lives are affected, and they're going to affect other people, and those people will affect other people. And that's what Jon Compton did. He emceed my son's wedding. Excuse me, my son just walked in the door. My son Michael's walking in with his wife. He emceed my son's wedding at the last minute. My wife said to me, with the wedding planner, said, we don't have anybody to emcee. He's dropped out. As you can see, I'm thinking funeral and passing away in my mind, because that's what keeps coming up, and I apologize, because this is very devastating to me, because I've lost someone I love dearly. I'm trying to get through this. But Jon stepped in with the wedding planner, and he owned the room at this wedding reception. He was humorous, that deep voice, and this is the kind of man he was. At the last minute, he could take a situation in a situation, he could own that room, because that's the kind of man he was. And by mentioning that, I'm just telling you that this was the kind of man who never said no to you. He was an invited guest. He could have sat at the table, bantered with 12 other guests at the table. He had to eat his meal while other people were having fun, but he didn't mind, because that was the kind of guy he was. He would never say no to you, ever. One more quick story, and for you Harley people out here. He could never get me to get on a Harley. As much as he tried, I would never get on it. Yes, I'm a chicken. I'm sorry. I like 4 wheels and a lot of metal around me. But he loved his Harleys. If I wanted to find Jon on a Saturday, I knew where to find him at the Harley store. And he lived in them. He lived in many Harleys. He started a company called Harley Crew that was going to be a promotional for Harleys, and I'm sure he's talked to them about it. But one day I said to him, and again, my delivery is not as funny as Jon's. I said to him, Jon, when you ride that bike and you put your legs down, don't you worry about your legs getting hurt from all that heat coming off those exhaust fans. What do you wear? And I thought he'd say high boots and thick pants. He said, capri pants and pedal pushers. As Jon, I left town about April, and let me back up real quick. I don't want to keep too much time. I told him that I would speak for 2 minutes. I don't know how long I've been up here. But John and I were the best of friends. You have to understand that. But John and I had lived segmented lives. I was not part of his Harley world. I wasn't part of his church by the Glades, but I was part of my world with him. And our world was perfect. Our lunches together, his coming to our family gatherings, his love for my children. And I'm going to tell you why I say that in just one second. Why I know he loved my children. And he loved my wife very much. Because John, as he was going, well, let me back up. When he was getting sick back last year, he called me and I would take him to the VA, or my son Michael would bring him back from the VA in Miami. And John developed lung cancer. I don't know if many of you know that. John developed lung cancer based upon Agent Orange. As he told me, the VA called him up and said, we need you to come in for checking because too many people in your regiment or your battalion that were in that area of Vietnam were developing lung cancer. He said, well, I was never around Agent Orange. And they said, well, you don't know, you weren't exposed. So they brought him in and sure enough, they found cancer in his lungs. In typical John fashion, he said to me, Dale, you see, the cancer's from Agent Orange, it's not from smoking. He was proud of that fact. That's John. So, anyway, so I left town in April. And when I came back in June, he had deteriorated because I went to lunch with him right beforehand. And in those 2.5 months, John deteriorated rapidly. And I was shocked, but I was going through my emails. He was still talking business with me as his attorney was asking questions of me. He never mentioned to me he was sick. And when I called him up and said, John, I'm back in town, I want to come see you, he said, well, you're not going to like what you see. I've lost 40 pounds. I said, John, what's wrong? He says, oh, they say that there's something wrong with my stomach. Well, he knew. You don't go for cancer treatment at the VA without them doing a CT scan. He knew. But he didn't want anyone to know. He didn't want the treatment. He just wanted to live his life on his terms. And that's what he did. But how do I know he loved my children? How do I know he loved me? Because he called me up. He said, oh, Dale, I need you. And I need Mikey. I feel so separated from God. I said, John, we're coming. We're coming right now. My son lives in Miami. He drove up and we drove to John's place. And we prayed for him. And we read in Romans 8:38 that nothing will separate you from the love of God. I said, John, that's just your mind. It's not your spirit. And we prayed with him. He felt better. We took him to lunch. But he said to me, Dale, how do I know he love my children? He said, bring Mikey. Bring Mikey to pray for me. I want Mikey here. And that's what he did. This man loved my family, and I loved him very much. I'm going to end this today with a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, if I can find it. Eleanor Roosevelt said, many people walk in and out of your life, but only a true friend leaves footprints in your heart. John, I love you very, very much. And on a light note, everything I did for him in the legal world, I did pro bono. God bless you all. Thank you very much.